Thank you all for joining us for the Wisconsin Ag Export webinar to learn about what activities are going on with the Wisconsin Initiative for Agricultural Exports. Before Secretary Romanski provides his opening remarks, today's meeting will be talking about the export expansion grant projects that the Wisconsin Holstein Association is doing, as well as the Wisconsin Potato and Vegetable Growers Association. We'll introduce those folks briefly. And then Katie Udak from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation will be talking about how to apply for the International Market Access Grant. So that's all upcoming in this meeting. It is being recorded for everyone's information, and we will make this recording available as well as the materials in this meeting for everyone going forward. So with that, we'll have Secretary Romanski provide the opening remarks to begin the meeting.
Thanks, Mark. For those of you who were around for the first run of this, I'm going to be a little more concise now since we had a chance to run through it once already. Welcome to those that have just joined. This is the interim meeting, the Wisconsin Ag Export Council. This is a great time for us to share information with each other and gather information about some of the good work that's being done. Wanted to start off by saying that the numbers are still being finalized, but 2022 is going to be another record year for ag exports for the state of Wisconsin. 21 was our previous high of around $4 billion. 2022 is going to come in at about $4.2 billion. So it's about a 7% increase year over year. U.S. ag exports also have gone up. So there's a similar trend line there. But good news. I mean, our top 5 markets remain pretty strong, and we're trying to find other places, other markets that might be interested in Wisconsin products. So thanks to you all for your interest in that. Along those lines, we're also appreciative of the support we've gotten for our agency to support ag exports. All the way back to his first budget, Governor Evers proposed funding for an ag export initiative, and we've been fortunate to have bipartisan legislative support for that along the way. The reason I bring that up is today the governor is going to introduce his budget, and we're hopeful that we'll see continued increase in or continued funding for funding and support for ag exports, and we can hopefully continue to see the needle moving upward. The other thing I wanted to mention is that there's another aspect to this that Wisconsin's making some investments in that I haven't mentioned previously. Or I know we've had some conversation with the Department of Transportation, but there have been continued investments in infrastructure, and there was just Governor Evers and DOT just announced that there were some harbor assistance program funds that were made available to help increase with some of our harbor improvements in the state of Wisconsin. It's really important. We're kind of surrounded by water, and it's an opportunity for our state. And we're pretty excited about those investments as well. There's been an increase in the harbor assistance program funding in recent years, and that's helpful. I guess with that, I will say we look forward to what the conversation today leads to, and I will be able to listen in for part of it. I have to step out a little bit later, but Mark, I will turn it back over to your capable hands, and thanks everybody for joining today.
Very good. Thanks a lot, Randy, and appreciate the information and great news. And as you noted, we will be crunching a bunch of numbers here to get the more deeper detail on what that means for the dairy, meat, and crop products around the state. With that, what I will do is share the screen, begin to do that, and we will launch the PowerPoint for the meeting. There we go. And so from there, hopefully you're seeing the presentation. Is it in presenter mode?
Yes.
Well,
You look all set.
great. So from there, as you can see the agenda, so Randy has made his opening remarks. What we'd like to do is begin with the Export Expansion Grant project updates. First thing we'll do is, and actually so Wisconsin Holstein Association, Ron will kick it off with his presentation. We'll share screen with him. Wisconsin Potato and Vegetable Growers Association, Dana Roddy and David Wickline will from Awesome Farms and Produce will be speaking about that. As I mentioned before, Katie Udak, Wisconsin International, Export Development Corporation, International Market Access Grant. She'll be talking about that, how to apply for it, and then we'll be spending some time very briefly at the end just talking through what the trade promotion activities, those trade shows, inbound buyer missions and outbound missions, et cetera, that the International Agribusiness Center will be doing. Lisa Stout's mentioned here, but she's on a food export board meeting. So I'll be covering for her on this. I'm the understudy for today. So with that, I'll stop sharing, and then Ron, I think you'll be able to grab the screen then, and we can begin with your presentation on the Export Expansion Grant project that the Wisconsin Holstein Association is doing.
Very good. Good morning, everyone. So, just to give a little background, Wisconsin Holstein Association and ourselves decided to partner when we saw that the funds became available, and people might ask why. Well, obviously, the Wisconsin Holstein Association has been around for a really long time, over 100 years. My company, I've been in business for 32 years. Just to give you a little background on myself, we presently export to over 40 countries. I'm a small family-owned business. I've traveled to, my daughter keeps track. That's her hobby. I'm at 72 countries. I think she told me a couple of weeks ago. I speak Spanish and Portuguese. If you don't, one of the things about me, we've been a regular exhibitor at World Dairy Expo for past 25 years, and I've served on the International Advisory Committee for Expo here in the past. One of the things I'd like to start early on this is to just thank for these types of funds to become available for small businesses and like myself and the Wisconsin Holstein Association. The challenges of the recent years as a Wisconsin taxpayer, it's nice for a change to have access to monies that I've paid in over many years. I was thinking about as I prepared for this, I think it's the only, I haven't applied as a small business owner for a lot of grants over the years. I think this is only the second time when we partnered with Wisconsin Holstein that I've done this type of grant. So I'm kind of a newcomer to this, to be honest. Why is this Wisconsin? And a couple of things I would mention. Generally, when I do presentation like this, I tend to do more bullet points than being so wordy. But not knowing, as I looked at everyone that was going to be attending this meeting, your backgrounds, and thinking it would be recorded and shared with people, I thought maybe we would write this a little more in detail. So I'm not going to read every single slide in its entirety, but that's one of the reasons that you'll find it like that. One of the things for a small business is this type of grant, and for the Wisconsin Holstein Association, they have the membership, we offer the expertise. And we've had a Wisconsin Holstein Association in a way of two organizations working together to benefit each other. They did our catalogs for about, I don't remember, it was 10 years or 11 years. In their slow time of the summer, when there is when we generally created our Holstein sire catalog that we would create one time per year. That helped their budget, and I didn't have to hire a full-time person to have on staff. Just to give an idea how we've worked together over a long period of time. We've done other things together over the years. One of the things that I read about this grant becoming available is that with the internet, things have changed a lot, as everyone knows. And many times small, medium, or even larger Holstein breeders in Wisconsin, they might be contacted by somebody from Argentina, Egypt, Australia, Japan. I'll give a few examples. And someone will buy 10, 15, maybe 5 embryos. And that small breeder gets excited. Oh, I made a sale of 10 embryos. Now becomes the challenging part. How do I get them to the end customer? Well, if it's only 10 embryos, those embryos could have a value for that farmer of maybe $10,000, or it could be $5,000. It just depends, obviously, on the value of the genetics. Well, there's a lot of places in the world that we can ship embryos with semen. And so it allows economies of scale for the customer on the other end. And also that the Holstein breeder in Wisconsin, they don't have to know all the nuances of trying to send 10 embryos to a particular market. So we've done some of this in the past, but one of the things is this grant became available. It made us talk with the board, the Wisconsin Holstein Association, how we could work together. And one person who was very helpful from the Wisconsin government sector was Ryan Dunn. We had lots of questions for him, and he found out how he actually really encouraged us to do this and go forward with this. So that is one of the things that, as we talked to him, asked questions, he was incredibly helpful. But that was one of the concepts about it, how we can help Wisconsin Holstein and breeders ship embryos to different parts of the world and make their life simpler. So there were 3 parts of the grant we applied for. One was developing a Spanish language catalog. Second was exhibiting at the Australia International Dairy Week show. And third is exhibiting at a Mideast trade show. So I'll talk about the Spanish catalog first. So one of the things is we have several countries where we do business that people create their own Spanish catalog. Why? Certain countries like Ecuador, they have import duties. You can't ship a catalog to Ecuador. Second, for languages, difference in Spanish, those who speak Spanish understand some differences. So creating a catalog for the countries that don't create wasn't as cost effective as if we were going to do it for all over Central and South America. We created 2,000. It's actually been done, just for your information. It's not like it's in the waiting mode. The proofs came out in December. We printed 2,000 copies. Was printed here in Wisconsin, so the dollar stayed right in Wisconsin for that part. And we produced them after the December proofs because our bulls all receive new information 3 times a year. We produced a 36-page catalog that will go to about 10 different Spanish-speaking countries through our distributors. Those countries are listed here. Now, some of these countries I list here will be small quantities because they do produce their own catalog, but it allowed us in some growing markets, particularly Colombia and Mexico and Paraguay and Uruguay, to have a larger presence with those catalogs. Yes, we've printed once a year English catalogs in the past. One of the things is those English catalogs, it was able to show our customers, well, literally around the world, we're offering them the same sires, same genetics as we sell here in the United States. I don't think I have to explain to anybody the advantage of having a Spanish language catalog for those countries. Here's the catalog. You can see right up and top, it's actually looks exactly the same as our English catalog, except at the top it says in the right-hand corner, Espanol. And in the catalog, there's a page here as you look to the right that features and talks about Wisconsin Holsteins. And that was promoted and created by the Wisconsin Holstein Association. Every sire, every bull that came from Wisconsin is labeled by bred in Wisconsin, so customers can see that. There's obviously information about explaining all the details of our genetics and terminology. And we've shared this via WhatsApp, and there's all, which is the new, virtually anybody that's dealt with international business knows what's up. And I'm sorry, I'm saying that in Spanish. If you speak Spanish, they say what's up instead of WhatsApp. But it's a way today, for instance, in Paraguay, it's really incredible how many people use the WhatsApp application as far as dairy producers to communicate amongst themselves. There's a QR code on the catalog, so people want to download it, they can. Has it achieved its goals, meaning helping our people that want to see and be able to read things in Spanish? Yes, in terms of customer satisfaction. In terms of knowing what the final sales impact will be for my business, obviously that's going to take some months to know yet. One of the things with the QR code we can, and WhatsApp app, we can, and obviously even on our own website, we can update the catalog digitally and make it available to our customers. Anyway, that's simply basics rapid. So it's been printed. Not all of them have been shipped yet, because for certain countries where we ship catalogs, meaning we'll ship it along with a semen order, it will be combined with in boxes next to the tanks. And for customs fees, it's the most efficient way for someone to clear them through customs. But we've shipped already to a half a dozen of the countries. Anybody have a question about anything I covered so far? I thought I'd just ask quickly. No questions, I'll move along.
Sounds good, Ron. Thanks.
Yep. Talk about International Dairy Week in Australia. So I think here's one of the, I would like to mention at the outset, why a grant like this for a small business like me and for the Wisconsin Holstein Association was really of interest. So I have been doing business in Australia previously. So Australia is not a new market for me, but my representative was bought out by another company. So it made me go back to square one. And when you think about the cost of going to an Australian participating in the Dairy Week show, so our total ask for the booth space, for plane tickets, for meals, everything, is around $7,000. For a small business like myself, that's a chunk of money. And not knowing when you're going to get on the plane that you're going to actually find a customer. I had some meetings set up prior to getting there, but I think that's one of the things that where this type of grant, and also for the Wisconsin Holstein Association, for them to participate as an association just by themselves, that's a significant chunk of money to see if they're going to get a return for their members. International Dairy Week is the main dairy show in Australia. It's held in Tatura Park, which is about 2 hours north of Melbourne. It's a really warm place in January. If you want to escape Wisconsin winters, it's usually can be around 95 to 100 degrees some days. There's 7 breeds of dairy cattle with over 1,000 cattle exhibited. And they note about 4,000 attendees in total. This grant allowed us to, they do it a little bit different at IDW Week. Instead of selling you a booth space, they sell you a sponsorship. So you purchase a sponsorship, and in that sponsorship includes the trade booth and then also advertisements in their trade show catalog. And also then we sponsor, as part of the package, a couple of different classes we're allowed to give out awards to. This was an ad from that the Wisconsin Holstein did, promoting in the show catalog genetics. This was the ad we did on one of our sires that we found and expected to be of the most interest to Australian breeders. Just to show X Year Money and from Wisconsin. This was a picture right at the show. I'm pictured here with Laura Wackerhauser, who's the executive secretary of the Wisconsin Holstein Association. I've known Laura for a number of years. Just the same picture, just showing one side was Wisconsin Holstein and other for banners from my company. One of the things Wisconsin Holstein did, they went to dairy producers, or their membership, I should say, and allowed them to create ads promoting their farms and their genetics. And I would even mention one of the farmers who has started his own semen selling business. So that's a competitor of mine. He's now become, he included it. We handed out his handouts to everyone, just like my information. So we really tried to work in what I'll call a cooperative manner anyway. And those flyers were handed out. It's really a nice show. I just thought I'd include a picture from one of the Holstein cow classes. You see the large number of cows and the quality of cows in the show. And one of the things about this part of the show in Australia is people travel long distance. So as I was showing, we sponsor, as part of our sponsorship, we gave awards to class winners. The best part is you get to talk to breeders, and they come from all over Australia. I'm sure you're aware, Australia is a very big country. They fly from as far as Perth, which is a 4-hour plane ride just to get back to Melbourne. I talked to people who drove from 12 to 24 hours, drove to attend this show. So one of the nice things about this show is when you're there, you can talk from people from all parts, particularly in the semen business, which I'm in. I could talk from people rather than the time it would take and the cost to travel around Australia. In a few days, you can talk to people from a wide segment of the dairy industry. I visited with and kept notes over 30 Australian dairy producers during the show, and I just mentioned how far they came from. And one of the things was to learn firsthand and get updated firsthand. You can talk about emails, you can talk about the internet, but there's nothing like talking people face to face what's going on. And one thing Jennifer had asked earlier about New Zealand, I should mention one of the pluses that was not expected out of the show. So a man from New Zealand was there, and the two of us had known each other, did not know each other, pardon me. And in a period of about an hour, I made 2 sales, which was the surprise. Those 2 sales to him, or 2 orders he's created, are $20,000. So that, if I wasn't there, both him and I were talking about, that would have never happened, because New Zealand wasn't my expectation as part of attending this show. I also, as I was saying, my former rep was bought out. So when we had advertised that we were going to be there, one particular company had contacted us about representing us, and another entity, through a recommendation of a friend of mine, met with 2 new potential representatives. One of those 2 we're negotiating with right now, but I expect that we're working out contract deals to come to fruition shortly. So did we achieve our goals? Yes, meaning for both Wisconsin Holstein and my company. We handed out, I can't say the exact number of flyers that were handed out, but I mentioned this small farmer that started selling semen as well. His new representative stopped by the booth and picked up all the flyers that were left there for him. So that small farmer who milks 40 cows from Wisconsin was able to get that kind of contact and direct. Another person who sells embryos for one of the farms, or has sold embryos from Wisconsin, they picked up flyers from the show as well. So those were some of the pluses that came out of this trip. Do I consider it a good investment of grant dollars? You bet. We generated sales. It allowed me as a small business and the Wisconsin Holstein Association had never thought about exhibiting at Dairy Week. And another thing I would add to this, prices paid for embryos and or semen in Australia, good prices. There are certain markets of the world that are developing markets. Prices are not as high. And so it's not just making sales, you're making sales at a reason, what I consider a reasonable price. One of the things is if this was available, I hear the people talking today about budget. If it was available for next year again, I would apply in a heartbeat. And Wisconsin Holstein, I think their interest would be there as well. So any questions about IDW show, if anyone had any? And I'm sorry I've gone kind of fast, but 15 minutes to cover a lot of topics. Oh, this is like being in church. You don't have to answer questions even, so.
Yeah, well, and Ron, I appreciate sharing the information and certainly your comments. Couple thoughts. And so the international or the export expansion grants, the way these were designed, a little bit different from the International Market Access Grant that Katie will be talking about here in a little bit, is that that's for organizations, the export expansion grant is. And just like you did, Ron, it's benefiting companies directly, individual companies, but also companies in the industry. The term I've heard is cooperation. So your cooperative competition. So you had a competitor on the stand with you as well, but working together, understanding the sun shines for everyone. And the business goes to the folks who can best supply. So that's the idea of this export expansion grant, is to work with organizations. And some of those activities are, like you mentioned, Ron, and like we'll hear from Wisconsin Potato and Vegetable, around trade shows, around inbound buyer missions. In a couple of the other earlier webinars, we had presentations around a survey going out, for example. So some of these things are maybe more strategic, little less tactical in terms of the show is more direct and tactical, although also focusing on some newer markets and finding a greater amount of customers in a newer market area, a newer segment is also strategic approach. So it's a bit of both and. But I think it'll be interesting to see. And one comment, as you mentioned, there aren't plans to do another round of, we did a second round of export expansion grants for fiscal 2024. Those grants have a 2-year life. So depending on what funding is still available in that program. And we can also take a look at perhaps, one more round after this. As we see the results from all the export expansion grant projects later on, because there is some flexibility to do that. But I would also say that the International Market Access Grant for individual companies is something that folks can also use. So if you see the benefit from doing the show like you did, to be able to utilize that International Market Access Grant specifically for your operation, for your company, is an approach and an opportunity for folks to utilize. So we're sure. I'm just check the chat real quick. I'm not seeing any questions in chat either. So if there are any questions from the group, but if not, then Ron, if you wouldn't mind, let me ask: are you all wrapped up here on your?
I just had one additional slide.
Oh,
and
sorry.
Because and of course now technically it's not working, so you're not the only one who had technical difficulties today. So the last slide I'll just mention, for some reason it's froze. We applied for funds to do a show in the Middle East as well in the same way. We're not planning, we're looking at 2 different shows, one either in October, but more likely they have since so many of you have international background, you've probably heard of the Euro Tier show in Germany that's held. Well, they actually have a Euro Tier Middle East show, and that is in March of 2024. That is the likely place that we would use these funds. We do business in Saudi Arabia, we do business in Egypt and Turkey. And speaking with some of our Middle Eastern representatives, they've spoke as that's probably the best place for us to participate. I mentioned the places we do business, but there's a lot of places we don't. So this allowing us to participate at this particular show, one of the reasons we decided to wait till either this fall or next year is we wanted to see with the Wisconsin Holstein how things went at IDW and see if there was anything we would change in how we approached those shows with Wisconsin Holstein. And thought, let's see how the first item goes before diving right back in March, meaning next month. So that's the only other slide that I had to add. Other than that, I'm completed, and I wish to thank everybody for listening. Again, I wish to thank the people in the government of Wisconsin that work to create these kinds of ideas and grants, because as a Wisconsin taxpayer, I appreciate the funds, and you're helping small businesses. That's nice to see. Thank you.
Ron, I appreciate those comments, and certainly to put our tax dollars to work to help grow Wisconsin business is a benefit to all, for sure. And certainly there are opportunities if folks have questions onward, plus with the recording, as we share that out, then there may be questions that come to us onto you. So we'll make sure to keep in touch on that and see what more develops and what more activities we can do. So with that, I will do the screen share from my side here. And this should be the correct screen now. So it's showing hopefully the agenda on the big screen here. So we move in to the Wisconsin Potato and Vegetable Growers Association. Dana Roddy and David Wickline will talk to us about the projects that Wisconsin Potato and Vegetable Growers Association is undertaking under export expansion grants. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to Dana and to David.
Well, I hope Dana's there.
Sorry, I always forget to hit mute before I start talking. My apologies. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dana Roddy. I work with the Wisconsin Potato and Vegetable Growers Association based out of Anago, Wisconsin. I've been there for 11 years now, so time definitely flies when you're having fun. But we are the association that represents the growers across the state. We have about 100 growers, and we represent more than 300 growers and affiliates when you consider the businesses that are not directly growers, but have a significant work with agriculture. And so David and I are going to kind of tag team this a little bit as Awesome Farms and Produce took advantage of one of the opportunities that we were able to apply towards the grant. And before I get into it, I'd like to kind of reiterate what Ron had said earlier, that our gratitude in receiving these funds was remarkable this year. The timing was impeccable, and I'll kind of go into that a little bit later, but it really provided the opportunity for us to move forward on a lot of avenues that we were considering, and it kind of helped speed things along a little bit. So Mark, if you don't mind, am I able to tally this here, or do you need to click to the next screen?
I'll move that for you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. And I'm not seeing it quite on my end yet. There we go. So we applied for the first grant when the opportunity came to light, and that timing is from May 22 to 24, and we were awarded $45,000. So the aspects or the objectives within that first grant are to identify Canadian and Mexican market opportunities. You'll notice if you were to read the final submission that we sent in that it's written with a lot of focus on Canada with some opportunities intertwined in Mexico. And the reason for that is that our industry on a national level for potatoes, National Potato Council, Potatoes USA, lobbying organizations, marketing organizations, in addition to working with individual states, has been working for years on getting access to Mexico. And when I say years, I mean years. And it ebbed and flowed quite throughout the process. There were times when we came very close to getting it, and then all of a sudden something would happen and it all fell through. And so we had to continue working on it. Right when this grant, I think we hadn't been awarded it yet, but it was the timing is a little, I can't recollect completely, but it was right about the same time that we were awarded this that we finally got the final green light that we could push potatoes from the United States 26 kilometers or beyond 26 kilometers into Mexico. And so again, the timing just worked out quite well. And so that's kind of why we weren't sure, given how much everything had ebbed and flowed over the last few years, if that was going to be the final straw or not. And so we had a focus to go to the Canadian Produce Marketing Association in coming up here in April. So we're sort of in the middle of this grant number one and some of the opportunities that we've already been able to take advantage of, with many more to come. But that's what we're planning on doing. And then as far as Mexico is concerned, again, right about the same time that we were awarded this grant, we learned that Potatoes USA, which is the national marketing organization for potatoes, had decided to create a reverse trade mission for Mexico in Denver. And so again, participating in the Marketing Association in Canada and Toronto coming up in April, and then hosting the reverse trade mission in Denver, being able to participate in that was huge for us. And David will go into a little bit more detail on that coming up. We also, our third objective in grant number one is to actually host a reverse trade mission here in Wisconsin for perhaps opportunities that we come across in Canada coming up in the trade show, and also from Mexico as well. That likely is going to happen in the fall of 2023 when we can show them harvest, or perhaps also in the spring of 2024, depending on how things go. So we have some discussions and planning to do for that, but we're quite excited about it. Mark, if you can go to the next slide. In addition to the trade show and the reverse trade mission that we're looking to host, in order for us to have access or have more concrete discussions with any potential buyers, especially in Mexico, we decided to take one of our bags that we had already designed for our Healthy Grown program and translate them into Spanish. So we worked quite heavily with APHIS, with the USDA, to get all the requirements, and Awesome Farms and Produce, which is one of our grower members, of course, was one of the first of our members to jump on this opportunity and really express interest on taking it to the next level. We've already had some growers that, in terms of seed, that do export their seed to Canada on some level, but getting this into Mexico is quite a huge advantage to be able to take advantage of. So this is, you'll see it's quite bold yet simple, with showing a prepared recipe, which in our research has shown that people are more likely to buy potatoes if they can see, or any product if they can see it in a finished dish. And so it's got our newly designed Healthy Grown certified seal on there, and then the guidelines, following the guidelines of what needs to be written in Spanish. And then on the back, we have a recipe that they can make along with nutrition information and the opportunity to scan a QR code that takes them to our website to actually meet the grower where those potatoes came from. And that particular section of the bag is interchangeable. So if we had other of our growers that wanted to ship as well, we can change that out and it can link to their page in addition. So we did this to the 5 and the 10 pound russet bags translated into Spanish. And this obviously promotes the environmentally friendly practices that our growers do on a regular basis. And so being able to stretch that message. And Mark, I'll let you go to the next slide. That'll show the 10 pound bag russet, which is the same with the exception of the recipe. And so being able to share this environmentally friendly message and expand that is quite huge. And you can go to the next slide. So then we also had the reverse trade mission in October. And like I said, this was planned by the Potatoes USA, the national marketing organization for potatoes, and Awesome Farms and Produce decided to take advantage. We also had one of our staff members go as well. I will say, which I know David is going to reiterate as well, that the timing of this and being able to take advantage of it and really get the ball moving on some of the efforts that we had talked about after we were awarded the grant just worked very well in conjunction. So David, I will go ahead and turn it over to you to share some of your direct experience.
Yeah, you could go to the next slide, Mark. So this was the reverse trade mission that Potatoes USA put on in October. My background is actually more on the dairy side with cheese products. And I've had opportunities in my career to do some trade missions. This goes back to Tommy Thompson and Jim Doyle days. So I've shown my age here a little bit, but one of them was to Mexico and one was to the EU to promote Wisconsin cheeses. And they were very good to be able to go out and meet with the buyers. But I have to say, I've only been at Awesome about a year now. Awesome is probably one of the top 3 growers of fresh potatoes in the state of Wisconsin. So this being thrown into this has been quite the experience. But going to the trade, this reverse trade mission, if you want to go to the next slide, they brought in 15 buyers from Mexican companies that are pre-qualified. They were already purchasing potatoes from the USA or had interest to buy from USA producers. They'd had established credit. And so the opportunity that this grant money gave us to go out, meet in Colorado at Potatoes USA and spend almost 3 days, with these buyers was invaluable. I mean, the time it would have taken me to spend to go and try to, open up the Mexican market and find those buyers, this saved a lot of time and a lot of money. And again, the opportunity to meet with these potential buyers has pushed us so far along. You also have to think Wisconsin, when you look at the distance from Mexico and other potato producing areas within the country, we aren't the farthest away, but there's people closer. So freight dollars alone gives them a benefit, but we have met with the buyers. We tell them what we have, the whole Healthy Grown program. And so we have had quite a bit of interest, and we've missed out on a couple of orders. One we couldn't fill, but one we also have the opportunity to move forward. So this has been good, and no doubt within a month or two, we'll ship our first order into Mexico.
Thank you, David. And I know Ron kind of touched on this too, but David and I have talked about this as well, just being able to go somewhere like a one-stop shop where you're able to converse with the people that you're trying to do business with, as opposed to taking a stab at the dark and looking for a needle in a haystack and not knowing where to start and very disorganized. So what Potatoes USA actually did as part of this reverse trade mission is on the agenda was a miniature trade show, if you will, where those growers that went from areas across the country went and were able to sit at a table and actually have one-on-one conversations with the delegates that were invited. So that made everything very convenient in moving forward and continuing those discussions. We also, after we had done the reverse trade mission, we're happy to find out that the state was offering another opportunity for a grant. And so we applied for grant number 2. That time frame is from January of this year through 2025. That was for $50,000. It's a lot of the same from the first grant in terms of objectives, with a little heavier push towards shipping potatoes actually to Mexico. On the reverse trade mission, Olson Farms and Produce had learned that Mexican delegates were very interested in shipping potatoes. So we were able to work that into the grant as well, in addition to having someone accompany with us as a translator, help in that nature, have the conversation, someone who's well-versed. It's one thing to know how to speak Spanish. It's another to know how to speak Spanish for that particular industry, and especially when you're making some having some hardcore discussions. And so all of that will definitely be an asset as we continue to move forward. But we are still in the process of creating some materials for specific Mexican and Canadian markets. Canadian is, again, mostly seed, but we have intertwined some message with fresh as well. We would like to participate in a trade show in Mexico in 2024. That one is occurring this year as well, but it was a little bit of a tight turnaround. So we kind of wanted to see how the one in Toronto will go and then go from there. But that one is in Guadalajara. And so we're looking forward to going there in 2024. And then again, host another reverse trade mission for them to actually come to a farm in Wisconsin and see how we do things. I think a lot of times there can be the misunderstanding that agriculture is the same, even in the same industry, in different areas of the country, and that definitely is not the case, as we all know. So being able to bring them to a farm or several farms in our area and show them our land, show them how we do things, and have those discussions is definitely going to be an advantage as well. And I believe, Mark, that was my last slide. David and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to present with you today and share our experiences thus far, as we look forward to many more that are on the docket. And if anyone has any questions, we certainly invite any that you might have.
Great. Well, thank you, Dana and David, for that. And just looking at the chat real quickly here. So Charles, from Charles, you appreciate the call out to the national organization. We have a great amount of resources in Wisconsin, being able to piggyback on what the national groups are doing. It's a great opportunity for more export. So, and I think that is a great use of the funding as well. The idea of this is not state alone or to replace the federal, but actually to leverage that. It's a both and approach. To look at those federal funds, utilize those as best you can, and then be able to go that next step to promote more of Wisconsin, because oftentimes those national organizations, of course, need to be across the entire U.S. And so they can't necessarily single out one area or another. So for us to be able to apply those Wisconsin dollars for the Wisconsin businesses, I think, interesting between the both of organizations and both these activities is that you've got one or two, let's say, pioneers or anchor companies that are going out that are able to move on that. But I think the benefit for the industry overall too is that then for some others who may have been thinking about it or maybe not ever thinking about it, but then realizing that if this company is doing it, then maybe we should be thinking about it too. So there's an opportunity, I think, to grow the industry overall through your activities. So you as pioneers, as leaders, to be able to help grow that number of exporters in the state across these categories, I think is important and a great benefit. As I mentioned with Ron's presentation, but also Dana and David, as you look for your individual companies to move forward, and any of the association members actually, to be able to utilize the International Market Access Grant, to be able to do that for your individual company. That's for companies and as opposed to organizations, which is what this Export Expansion Grant is designed to do. And I think that's, if there are no questions, I'm not seeing any more in chat. If there are no questions from folks attending, then what we can do is move to the next presentation, and that's, as I've mentioned a couple times here, the International Market Access Grant. Katie Udak, Global Trade and Investment Grant Specialist at the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. So Katie's going to talk about what that International Market Access Grant is, what it does for you, but also how you apply for it. So Katie, I'll advance, and like we did the last one, if you just, I'll be the clicker. So just tell me when you need to advance. And with that, we'll move to your first slide. Thank you, Katie.
Great. Thanks, Mark. I'm going to jump right into it. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I'm going to talk just very briefly about who WEDC is, what we do, and then we'll focus on the International Market Access Grant and how you can use that to help grow your business. So Mark, if you want to go to the next slide. WEDC is the state's lead economic development agency. So we assist Wisconsin businesses with business and community development, entrepreneurship and innovation, and global trade and investment. And we do that through a variety of financial assistance and technical assistance programs. One of the areas that we support is export development through the Division of Global Trade and Investment. And our financial assistance program to support export development is called the International Market Access Grant. You'll hear us shorten that to the IMAG most of the time. So if we'll go to the next slide. The International Market Access Grant, or the IMAG, is designed to support Wisconsin companies with reimbursement for specific short-term expenses related to a targeted export project. So something that's going to help grow their presence in their identified international market in a way that wouldn't be possible without grant funding. To be eligible for this program, companies have to be for-profit, registered and operational in Wisconsin for at least 1 year, and have to have an exportable product or service. So for most agricultural companies, you won't really need to worry about our cost input requirement, which is a 35% Wisconsin-based cost input. If you're growing the product here, it's way more than 35% Wisconsin-based. So that's very exciting for agribusinesses. We're really pleased to offer a portion of this funding reserved especially for agribusinesses this year and for the next 3 years. So there is a reserved portion of International Market Access Grant funding just to support the export of crops, meat, and dairy from Wisconsin. So we can go to the next slide. Oh, great. Thank you. These are the allowable expenses under the International Market Access Grant. And I won't read all the way through them, but I'll just give a little explanation for each of these main categories. You've heard some of the other presenters talk about some of these expenses already. Trade shows, redesigning packaging for foreign languages, translating marketing materials. There are a lot of costs that we can assist you with under this program. The most common is trade shows. It can include your booth construction or the materials to set up your booth, your registration fee, one-time shipping if you need to have sample product that you need to ship over there. It can also include interpreters or other people that you need to help you staff your booth other than your own company staff. We also include non-WEDC trade ventures or trade missions. So if you're going on a trade venture with, for example, a federal agency or that's privately organized, those costs could potentially be included on this grant as well. Marketing and promotion is the other main category that we see companies requesting funds for. So website development, translating your marketing materials, translating your website. international intellectual property protection. So if you want to register your trademark in a foreign country, or product certification. Product certification we see a lot for agribusinesses. If a foreign government needs to give your product a special certification for you to be able to sell it, especially if it's a food product, the costs of getting that certification could potentially be covered by this grant. We also cover consulting services that can include WEDC's global network of trade reps. We have trade reps in more than 90 countries worldwide. It can also include other state or federal agencies or trade reps from private companies. They can include other types of consultants as well, like website designers, marketing consultants, people to do market research or partner searches, business to business matchmaking. There are a lot of options within this category. And finally, we cover export education, whether you want to go to a seminar or a conference, or for larger companies, we sometimes see them bringing speakers in. As long as the education is directly related to exporting and it's beyond the scope of your regular employee onboarding, those costs are something that could be reimbursed under this grant. Specifically, we've seen companies use these funds for cultural competency or foreign language training, for best businesses education, or for export compliance courses to make sure that they're getting all the paperwork and the shipping materials right for their product. I do want to note that transportation and lodging are not reimbursed under this grant. So they can be included toward your matching requirement that we'll talk about a little bit more on the next slide, but we do not reimburse for any transportation or any hotels, for example.
And Katie, a question came through related to this slide from Charles. Could this certification reimbursements be applied to third-party audits required by customers? So, for example, BRC, SMETA, or carbon audits?
That's a great question.
Let me jump in there, Mark, to clarify. So BRC is British Retail Consortium. SMETA is an ethical supply chain audit. These are things that my customers in the EU are absolutely requiring of us to do business with them. Is there any way I could apply for that under my IMAG grant?
Sure, we have covered third-party audits in the past. So one of the things that you'd need to show us in the application is that, as you said, your customers are requiring you to have this before they'll purchase from you. So if you can show us that it's necessary to be able to export, that's something we might be able to cover. Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
You can
Thank you so
include
much
that in
for that.
application. Sure. So if we'll go to the next slide, I'll talk about budgeting. This is a reimbursement grant. So you'll pay for all of the expenses up front out of your own budget, and then you'll submit documentation to us on the back end. We'll reimburse you for the eligible costs. Expenses that are incurred or paid already, so anything retroactive, won't be able to be reimbursed. So when you're applying for this grant, you want to be forward-looking, things that you haven't started yet. We offer 2 tiers of support under this program, $10,000 maximum for any eligible applicants. And for manufacturers that have graduated from Export Tech, we offer support of up to $25,000. There is a limit in how many grants you can receive in the lifetime of the company. So if you're at the $10,000 tier, 3 grants in the lifetime of your company. And at the $25,000 tier, that goes up to 6 grants in the lifetime of your company. There is a matching funds requirement. It's a 30% match. So if you're awarded $10,000, you would need to spend an additional $3,000 out of your own budget that we would not reimburse you for. So a total spend on the project of $13,000 in order to be reimbursed for 10. Anything that is eligible as a grant expense that I talked about on the previous slide can also be a match expense. We'll take the total amount of expenses that you submit to us and we'll split it out into the correct ratio. The only thing that is different is, like I mentioned, transportation or lodging. Those are match only. They are not reimbursable. Great to consider, especially if you're going to an overseas trade show. It is really easy to hit that $3,000 with just a flight to Europe. So definitely something to consider as you're budgeting. All of your expenses must be invoiced and paid within your approved project window. So we operate on a rolling start date. Your start date is based on when we review your application. We recommend applying no less than 8 weeks before you need to start spending grant money or before you need to sign up for any event. Anything that is invoiced or paid before we've approved an application will not be reimbursable. So good to be looking forward into projects that are happening several months down the road so that you can be approved well in advance. We're currently in the 2023 grant cycle, so all projects will need to end by December 31st of 2023. When you are actually doing your project, you'll want to be careful to retain all the documentation for anything that you're spending. At the end of your project, we're going to ask you for an invoice for each expense. So dated, itemized, showing us exactly what you bought and who you bought it from. You'll send those invoices into us. We'll take a look at all of them. We'll split it out into the appropriate grant and match, and then we'll reimburse you for those expenses. So how do you go about getting this money? If we go to the next slide, we'll talk about the application process. We are really excited that the application is now available online through our Network Wisconsin application portal. So that's going to reduce the amount of paperwork that you have to send to us, and it's helping our review go a lot faster. So if you want to get access to the application portal called Network Wisconsin, you can send me an email. I'll send you the invite, get your account all set up, and you'll see the application waiting for you when you log into your account for the first time. Like I mentioned, you're probably going to want to apply at least 8 weeks before you need to start spending the grant money. That gives us time to review and make a decision, but we review each application as it is received. So you don't need to wait for a certain date when we'll compare all the applications against each other. Whenever you apply, we will review your application based on its own merits and make a decision based on when we've reviewed it. The application for 2023 is currently open. The last date that we will accept applications this year is April 1st. So if you have projects in 2023 that you want to put on this grant application, April 1st is the absolute last date to send in that application. We operate on the rolling start date, like I mentioned, and all projects have to end by December 31st, 2023. That's the absolute last date to spend any grant money. If you have projects in 2024, especially if you're already looking forward at trade shows, our 2024 application will become available on July 1st of this year. So you are in a great position to get in really early on the 2024 application. If you apply right away in July, you could have up to 18 months to work on that project, all the way from July 2023 to December 2024. So that's something to consider if you've got projects planned for next year. When you are writing your application, we're going to ask you to identify specific countries that you're going to use the funding toward. And we want you to demonstrate a targeted strategy that's based on some kind of research or evidence. We want you to show us that you have a reason that you want to do this project. You have a reason you want to be exporting to these countries. And then tell us how this is going to benefit your business. We want you to be as specific as you can about the uses of funding. We'll give you a budget spreadsheet, and we'll also give you a space where you can narrate that budget to us, explain exactly what these funds are going to be used for and why it's important for your business. I have a partial view of applications that are in progress. So if you want me to review a draft of your application before you submit it, I am always happy to do that. I like to be really hands-on with this process, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you have along the way, either during the application or at any point during the process. The staff at the International Agribusiness Center are also a fantastic resource. They obviously are experts with agribusiness, so they are happy to answer questions as well and to help you design a good project for this application and carry out that project all the way through. So there are lots of resources and support available to help you with this program. I've got my contact info here on the last slide. So if you want to get started on an application or you want to take a look at it and consider it for next year, send me an email. I will get you set up with the Network Wisconsin portal, and you can take a look at the International Market Access Grant application. I'm also happy to answer any questions that you have about the International Market Access Grant or any other WEDC program. So my email and my phone number are here if there's anything I can help you with. I think we have just a minute or two for maybe a couple of quick questions. If anyone wants to set up a time with me for more in-depth questions, I'm happy to do that as well.
I'll unmute here. I'm not seeing any questions in chat. Katie, thanks for certainly all the information, but also the shout out to the International Agribusiness Center team. So you'll see a few of us on there. There's Luis Santana, Jennifer Liu, and two other members of the team, Shirley Acedo and Lisa Stout. They are involved actually with other meetings with the U.S. dairy export and with food export. But Katie, as you mentioned, and you can certainly get a hold of me as well. I'm somewhat familiar with the International Market Access Grant Program as well, having worked with it in the past. So certainly to have that conversation with us around what your projects might be. But it doesn't stop you from being able to start if you're interested, you can go ahead and start the application, take a look at what's needed, and then parallel concurrently talk with us around what you think that project ought to be. Katie is the ultimate resource in terms of what works and what doesn't, in terms of things that can be reimbursed and all that. But we can certainly talk with you about how your project is going, and not that you're able to apply for something that happened before you even applied and try to get reimbursed for that. But as you're looking forward in the year, and these are strategic in the sense that you're trying to develop new markets. Maybe it's a new country for you, or maybe it's a new product line within a country. It's those things that are not operational but developmental activities. Charles brought up an interesting point on the sustainability things, and also for just the product registrations. If you're going into a new market, certainly for food products, there's a lot of documentation registration requirements that you have that are maybe not the same as others. So those are all things that we can work with you on, but to really identify where those things you need within that space of either the state fiscal year, if you do it right from the start when the application period opens back up again, or if you've done it in April and a couple months later you've got your green light to go to work on what's going to be happening in those next few months before December rolls around to make sure you utilize those funds. And I know we've got some folks online here who have actually utilized the International Market Access Grant. So I don't know if any of the companies who've worked with it before have anything to add. That would be good for the folks who maybe aren't as familiar with it, and the organizations who then want to share that information out with the rest of their with the rest of their groups. So I didn't want to put anybody on the spot, but certainly we've got this year's that's wrapping up not too long from now. That's part of the reason why Katie's joined us today to talk about this. And Katie, you would be, I believe you've done this for other groups. You were just with the Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association, I think yesterday, weren't you, on a presentation just like this one here? And you obviously can go much more in depth as well. But if a particular association wants to have Katie on, we can certainly work with you, and we'll join Katie with you on that to help talk with those folks who might want to share that with their broader groups. So, well, great. Katie, thank you for the information. Thank you for all the work you do to make these go through. It's a bunch of work, as you of course well know, to be able to manage and keep all those plates spinning, as the metaphor goes, with all these different grants and documentation requirements. But you guys have done a fantastic job, and that online portal makes a big difference, I think, now these days to be able to do that application. Great. Well, if there are no questions from the group, then what we can do is go to the next phase. So again, thank you, Katie. And the trade promotion activities for 2023. And we had the hiccup at the start here with the link not working for a number of folks, but we'll try to catch up and still wrap up by the end of the hour and a half that we'd budgeted for this time together. But of course, if you've got questions, we're available to talk a bit longer. Certainly the link, this meeting is open for at least another half hour beyond this to talk through. But if you don't mind, we'll just talk about the trade promotion activities that are planned between now and the end of the state fiscal year, June of 2023. Trade promotion activities include trade shows, typically a pavilion, Wisconsin stand that has a few companies, maybe it could be a couple of companies like we did at Cial Paris, or it could be 4 or 5 companies and some of the other shows. Gulf Food, in fact, Lisa Stout and Shirley Aceto both will be outbound to the UAE, to Dubai, here in another day or so, actually, in order to handle the stand for the Gulf Food show. And then just I had a message come through in a different platform here. Just want to make sure it's something. Okay. So that show is the largest annual food show in the world. So we've got 2 companies participating in that show. And this is for finished foods, packaged foods, food ingredients. And then first part of March, the VIV show Asia, that's in Bangkok, that's an agricultural trade show. So the livestock genetics feed companies, mostly the dairy shows or companies are involved in Gulf Food, but it's also available for pulses, for meats, for food ingredients, for specialty foods, and pet foods actually too. So certainly some opportunities in that. But in Bangkok, we've got 9 companies, and both of these shows, there's no more recruiting. Those shows are we've got the groups, because normally we're doing that several months in advance. But it's quite a large group, and actually between the companies that are on the Wisconsin stand, and we had enough interest in the activity that Jennifer Liu is the lead for the Wisconsin stand. Luis Santana is the lead for the Food Export Association of the Midwest. So that group, who also does value add feed. We've got actually 2 stands in with Wisconsin companies, plus there are some other states that are exhibiting on that food export. So talking about the both and, so we still work with Food Export and all the programs that they have, and some of that's those trade show stands. So Luis Santana is the lead for that side of it, but we've got one organization as well helping to promote overall the business in Wisconsin, and that's the National Association of Animal Breeders, NAAB. So they're on there just to promote the industry overall, but certainly that's a benefit for Wisconsin as they're on the Wisconsin stand. And we are one of the major exporters of bovine genetics, especially for dairy in the country. So when they talk about dairy genetics, then they're talking about Wisconsin for the most part. And from there, later on in March, Cial, that's a major show that happens every other year in Paris. But then also they've launched over the last year or so, Cial Americas. That's in Las Vegas. That's a major food show. Shirley Aceto is going on that one. We've got 10 companies, and that's actually a Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin activity stand, and working to promote Wisconsin dairy products at that major food show in the U.S. Shirley's supporting that. She'll certainly be working with the Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin folks. And Chad, he sent me a message, so he's got another board meeting to join, so he may not be with us at the moment, but Chad Vincent from Dairy Farmers Wisconsin. But that's an opportunity to be able to support Dairy Farmers Wisconsin with the know-how and the background that Shirley has on dairy products and dairy and exporting in general. And then as well, we'll be visiting, because there are several Wisconsin companies exhibiting independently. So she'll be also supporting those folks and helping them to understand what supports are available for them, like the International Market Access Grant, for example, and some of the others. From there, 25th to 28th of April, toward the end of April, then is Food and Hotel Asia. So that's selling to, of course, food service buyers. And that restaurants are included in that, certainly. And we're in the process of recruiting companies. So it's in Singapore, but it actually covers a broad part of Southeast Asia. So in that large and growing market. So any of those areas where it might be of interest to you. So besides Singapore, you've got Thailand, Vietnam, you've got Indonesia, as well as Japan, Korea, parts of China. So certainly, if that's an area of interest to you, we're still recruiting companies. Dairy, of course, means all those dairy products that you would know: cheese, whey, butters, etc. But crop products are more any of those products that are made from plants, whether it's just the raw grain itself, or whether it's processed foods made from those plant materials. That's the focus that we're recruiting for that. So there's space available. If there's interest, please get a hold of any of us here online. I'll show a contact slide at the end that has the names and emails and phone numbers of the team. Let me just check the chat real quick as it's coming in. Ginseng board will be in the Singapore too. Okay. Jackie, thanks for that. Ginseng board, Wisconsin. So ginseng board representing Wisconsin ginseng. Of course, that's an important part of the world for ginseng, not just China. And I see from Ryan, MCT Dairies will be exhibiting and attending Gulf Food, Food Hotel, Singapore, and Ciel America. So we're a trifecta. So working in all three of those areas. So those are important shows, and we'll make sure to reach out and say hello to everybody. And maybe the opportunity on one of these informational webinars is for the folks who have participated in those shows, a bit like what David, Dana, and Ron had done, is just to give us a bit of a background on what your specific experiences were to help those who maybe not as familiar with those markets and those shows to see what the benefit of those are. So we'll reach out on those for future webinar content, because I think that's important for everyone to share what their experiences are. In May, Siam in Morocco. That's a relatively new market for us, although it's opened up quite a bit. Morocco functions a bit like Belgium and Netherlands does in Europe, in terms of being a port of landing, where then gets distributed out into the rest of the continent, certainly in the neighboring countries in Northern Africa and Eastern Africa, a bit to the south. So that's with USLGE, U.S. Livestock Genetics Export, working with them, as well as the state export partnership program. That's SBA funds that are channeled actually through Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. So we're looking to recruit 6 companies in the livestock genetics and feed space for that show. It'll be a genomics conference, so we won't be doing a trade show stand, but we will be hosting a conference. We've got some folks from UW-Madison coming to talk about genomics, and that'll have so the buyers for livestock genetics feed products out of Wisconsin would be attending that seminar. So a great opportunity for those companies who are in this space, who are interested in this market, to be able to meet with prospective buyers, to understand the market a bit better, and also a chance for us to be able to explain to the buyers what genomics is, how we use it in Wisconsin, what that research is, but then also a chance to be able to promote a bit the individual companies who are participating in that. So doing it a little bit differently than a traditional trade show stand. Interzoom Cologne, that's a wood product show. That's one of the specialty areas for Jennifer Liu, in addition to mink and ginseng, as well as she works with, of course, the livestock and genetics and feed products. We're in the process also of recruiting companies for that. 5 companies. We're in touch with a number of people in the Lake States Lumber Association, but certainly if you know folks who are in the wood products industries, lumber, timber, but also some of those finished wood products, then that's a show. That's the first time we'll have had a trade show pavilion at that. And then moving into June, so as we're closing out the fiscal year, we've got 5 through 9 June, we've got inbound buyers for wood. So Jennifer was in Mexico for an activity. We've been partnering with the Softwood Export Council as well as American Hardwood Export Council. And so bringing in, so similar to what David and the Wisconsin Potato and Vegetable Growers Association did, bringing in those buyers. Mexico is certainly a focus, but from some other parts of the world as well, in order to, because Mexico is frankly a major buyer of wood products from the U.S. So recruiting those companies to visit Wisconsin, seeing the sawmills, seeing the forest firsthand, understanding the story about sustainability, all of those points that are important for buyers and to feel confident that what they're buying from Wisconsin is top quality, sustainably grown, and can certainly compete with anything that's available from Europe or other parts of the world. So giving ourselves in the U.S. and specifically Wisconsin an advantage, and to establish those all important relationships. Newer market for us as well, Galicia, Spain, agricultural products, again, for livestock genetics and feeds, recruiting 4 companies. Luis Santana is leading that one. That's funded by STEP as well. That's a Small Business Administration program, again, via WEDC, in order to be able to help those companies grow. So again, that example of both and, leveraging federal funds, but then also using what's available from the state in order to grow Wisconsin export business. And then finishing out the year is the marquee event. Secretary Romansky will be leading a delegation. We're recruiting 6 companies for that across a broad range of products: dairy, genetics, feed, wood, ginseng, craft and distilled spirits, and beers, food products, pet food. So it's a multi-sectorial mission to be able to meet with prospective buyers, both in London, and then there'll be some activity in Manchester, so that British Midlands. That's happening the 10th through the 16th of June. And of course, the fiscal year ends for the state and for the Wisconsin Initiative for Ag Exports this round, before we go for approval for the second or for the third fiscal year. But as we look at it, all of this WIE began in February and March of 2022. So we're just coming up on 1 year. We're talking 2 fiscal years, but it's actually 1 year of activity. So we've done quite a bit actually in that very brief period of time, as all you know, and all those activities will bear fruit, pardon the agricultural pun, over the next 2 to 3 years, frankly, as you need to begin these activities, plant those seeds again, before you're able to really benefit from those activities. But it's important to do that now, and we're being strategic as well as tactical. So I know we're a couple minutes over here, so just finally we'll round it out. The URL for at Ag Development, or if you just type in, if you go to datcap.wi.gov, just type in international agribusiness, type in export. Those will bring up the pages that you can reach us. But also, here's the team. This will be available as in the materials. Both the recording of this session as well as the PowerPoint here, and I'll Ron, if you're okay with sharing your PowerPoint, then I'll just integrate that with the one here, and then that way the information will be available all in one source. But that'll be up on the website in those pages around the International Agribusiness Center. But here's the team. Amy's new enough; we don't have her official headshot photo, but you see her on the screen here. But we'll certainly catch that up. But this is how you get a hold of us. And talking to one of us, you're talking to all of us, not only at DATCAP, but also at WEDC. We work and play well together, and the programs that we have are really designed to be both and, to be integrated, to work in collaboration. And that's the idea. And that's frankly the way we do it in Wisconsin. So with that, if there are no more questions, appreciate your time and your patience as we work through some technical difficulties at the start. But some great information. And again, thank you to Ron and Dana, David, Katie, for your valuable information. And we look forward to seeing you on March 29th for the Wisconsin Agricultural Export Advisory Council meeting. That will also start at 9 o'clock, just like these do. And then we will be sending out later on then our plans for these webinars in the future. And certainly if anybody online here has some interest or some ideas around the topics that you would like to see at these, then please send those to us so that we're able to make sure that these are relevant to your business. So we're at the adjourn point. So again, Lisa's name on the screen. And so reporting for Lisa Stout, then thank you very much to everyone for your time and your attention and your efforts to help grow Wisconsin agribusiness exports. We'll keep the meeting open, certainly, if you want to talk afterwards, but with it, this is the official adjournment of the meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And I will send along to my PowerPoint.
Great. Thanks, Ron. And I'll start the video. I didn't realize my it was just my picture on that, which is just fine because I tend to move around too much when I talk. So, well, great. We'll make sure to pull that together and get that information. We'll do some edit on it to make sure that it's the time of the actual meeting. Let me just read a couple chats here while we're looking at it. A couple thank yous coming through. So great. All right. Well, certainly it's available if you've got any additional questions or things specific, for your business. But that's the meeting.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, everybody, and appreciate you doing this. Katie, really appreciate your time and information. It's like you've done this thing a few times. Oh, she's off. Okay, I'm going to close it out now since it's just our team. So goodbye all.